So, have you ever really thought about what it takes to secure a nation's most critical spots? And I don't just mean digital firewalls. I'm talking about the real, physical barriers, the fences, the gates, that protect everything from prisons to power plants. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on this world by looking at a huge player in the Baltics, a company called Sungate.
Okay, so Sungate doesn't mess around. Right on their website, they make this huge claim. They say they're the most experienced creator of technical security solutions in the Baltics. Wow, that's a really bold statement. So you got to ask, how do they back that up?
Well, for starters, how about this? More than 20 years in the business. I mean, think about that. 20 years selling, installing, and testing all this stuff. You can bet they've seen pretty much everything and have tweaked their products to be tough and top-notch.
So, to really get a handle on their story, here's the plan. We'll start with their role, then get into their products, see who's trusting them, hear what those clients have to say, and wrap up with how they're innovating.
All right, let's kick things off by really understanding Sungate's role. I mean, in an industry like this, critical security, failure is just not an option, right? So they've really carved out a niche for themselves as a key gatekeeper for the whole region.
So, what are we actually talking about here? What are the tools of the trade? It really just boils down to three main things. You've got the fences that set the boundary, the gates that control who gets in and out, and all the automation that ties it together and makes it run smoothly.
Let's break that down a bit more. You know, their stuff ranges from simple fence materials all the way to standard gates for homes and some really smart automation. But where it gets really interesting is their specialty, these high-security gates. In Estonian, they call them turvavälavad.
And believe me, these are not your average driveway gates. Nope. We're talking about seriously high-end access systems. These things are designed, built, and maintained for places where security is everything. I mean, we're talking about a spectrum from a big hotel all the way up to a maximum security prison.
And that right there brings us to the heart of Sungate's reputation. So who exactly is trusting them with these super high-stakes security systems? Well, let me tell you, their client list, it reads like a who's who of a country's most important places.
First up, let's talk about the justice system. Sungate has handled projects at major prisons like Tallinn, Tartu, and Viru. I mean, these are places where controlling the perimeter is absolutely 100% non-negotiable.
Then you've got national security. Their work is right at the heart of it. They've secured places like the Amari Air Base, a super important military spot, and they've beefed up security at the Koidula border station, which is a key way in and out of the country. Oh, and they've also put in access systems at Tallinn Airport, the main hub for air travel.
And this stuff, it affects daily life too. They're guarding essential services, things like the Iru power plant that powers the capital city, and the port of Tallinn, which is a massive hub for trade and transport. When you step back and look at it, the sheer scope of these projects is just staggering.
But hey, don't just take my word for it, and don't just look at the project list. Let's actually hear from some of the people who've worked with them for years. That's how we'll really understand why they're so trusted.
So the Port of Tallinn points out three really key things. First, Sungate doesn't just sell you stuff, they offer solutions. Second, they hit their deadlines. And third, the work is always high quality. For a giant, complex place like a port, that kind of reliability, well, it's everything.
And what about sticking around for the long haul? Check this out. This partner, Marek Hergauk, talks about how reliable they've been in a partnership that started way back in 2001. We're talking more than 2 decades of trust, built project by project. That says so much about their consistency, doesn't it?
Okay, now this one is really interesting because of the scale. A representative for the airports says that for more than 15 years, Sungate has been the company they turn to for modernizing security, not just at one airport, but across multiple airports in Estonia. So this isn't just a one-and-done job. It's a massive, long-term, strategic partnership.
All right, so we've covered who they are, what they do, and the incredible trust they've built. But in the world of security, you can't just stand still, right? You're always a target. So for our last section, let's see how Sungate makes sure they stay on the cutting edge.
See, they're not just installers, they're innovators. And a perfect example is this development project they've got for advanced folding gates. And get this, they're working on it with scientists from Taltech, which is Tallinn's University of Technology. That shows a serious commitment to R&D and actually pushing their whole industry forward.
And that teamwork, it led to a huge breakthrough. You can see it right here. On one side, you've got the slow, traditional gate. On the other, what they developed.
Estonia's very first Kiirvoldik Varva, or fast folding gate. This thing gives you all the strength of a solid barrier, but it opens and closes way, way faster. And why does that matter? Well, it's critical for stopping unauthorized cars from tailgating their way into a secure area. Plus, it means emergency crews can get in super fast when they need to.
So, this brings us full circle, right back to where we started. What does it take to secure a nation's most critical sites? Well, if Sungate's story tells us anything, it takes decades of experience. It takes a portfolio packed with unbelievably sensitive projects. It takes the absolute trust of partners who've stuck with you for years. And maybe most importantly, it takes a relentless drive to keep innovating. It's this quiet, almost invisible industry, but it's totally essential, and it relies on just a handful of specialists to keep a country running safely, day in and day out.